Good evening and thank you for watching ECSO News on Blab TV, where facts matter. I'm Allison Morgan.
And I'm Amber Southard. Here's a look at our top trending stories. Behind bars after a homeowner chased a burglar from his house. On April 27th, Luis Bardisa broke into a home in the 8000 block of Binkley Street after threatening the homeowner and his girlfriend. Bardisa ran off and the homeowner followed. As you can see, Bardisa received some facial abrasions while the homeowner restrained him until deputies arrived. Bardisa was taken to a local hospital for treatment before being booked into the Escambia County Jail. He was arrested for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon without intent to kill, armed burglary of an occupied residence, trespassing, and larceny. And anyone remember the song Smooth Criminal by Michael Jackson? Well, it turns out Kevin Owens is not a smooth criminal. Kevin Owens was arrested in the 200 block of Chestnut Street after trying to carjack an Escambia County Sheriff's deputy who was driving an unmarked vehicle. Owens approached the unmarked car and began to pull a gun from his waistband. Once Owens realized he was trying to rob a deputy, he fled on foot and was captured. Owens is a convicted felon and has an extensive criminal history. He was charged with possession of a firearm by a felon and carrying a concealed firearm.
Caught after robbing a woman in a fast food parking lot. On April 2nd, deputies responded to the 1500 block of South Highway 29 in reference to a robbery in the subway parking lot. Once on the scene, the female victim told deputies while she was walking to her vehicle, a black male shoved her, causing her to fall. He then took her purse. The victim reported an iPhone, key fob, cash, and credit cards were inside the purse, as well as irreplaceable family heirlooms. The ECSO Major Crimes Unit, along with tips from the community, led to the arrest of Eric Lee Moorer Jr. He was charged with robbery by sudden snatching, wearing a mask during the commission of a felony, battery, grand theft, and fraudulent illegal use of credit card. Over the past few weeks, there have been several burglaries, robberies, and grand thefts committed throughout Escambia County, from the Avondale neighborhood to Warrington to Kingsfield Road. Because of the increase in violent crimes and burglaries, the ECSO Operations Division performed high-intensity patrols in numerous Escambia County neighborhoods. The 6-day operation resulted in 16 arrests, 4 guns, and several different illegal narcotics taken off the streets. 2 stolen vehicles were also recovered during the operation. Also, 8 criminal citations issued and 7 warrants were served.
It's that time in the show for the Crime Stoppers segment. Jacob Ard is wanted for grand theft and violation of probation. His bond has been set at $6,000. And Sandra Gross is wanted for grand theft, fraud, and violation of probation. Her bond has been set at $5,000. And Ashley Haynes is wanted for criminal mischief. Her bond has been set for $1,000. If you know the whereabouts of any of these individuals shown, report it to Crime Stoppers. There are 4 ways to submit a tip. Call in a tip to 433-STOP or text a tip using the P3 Tips app available for Android or the iOS phones. You can go online to p3tips.com or gulfcoastcrimestoppers.org. Then click on Submit a Tip online. All tips are anonymous. If your tip results in an arrest, you could be eligible for a cash reward of up to $1,000.
Thank you to Marcus Point Baptist Church for hosting the 25th Annual Law Enforcement Appreciation Service. It was a wonderful event which allowed us to celebrate with the community the retirement of 3 of our canines, Canine Ito, Canine Caleb, and Canine Barrow.
It's time for them to start a new chapter of their lives. They are now off to enjoy the world of retirement. Let's take a look back at their accomplishments here at the ECSO. Canine Caleb's primary job at the ECSO has been searching for explosives. He was instrumental in keeping venues safe during the visits of several politicians to the area, including Second Lady Jill Biden and President Donald Trump. In 2014, Canine Caleb placed first in the total search at the Region 1 USPCA trial in Escambia County. He also placed first in the 4-man team at the National USPCA trial in North Carolina.
K9 Barrow and K9 Ito have been responsible for locating many wanted suspects. From retail theft suspects to homicide suspects. They were also instrumental in locating missing special needs children during their careers at the ECSO. K9s Barrow and Ito have helped us nab dozens of drug dealers and assisted in getting several narcotics off the streets. Barrow has certified in USPCA on the regional level 4 times and the national level 1 time. In 2014, K9 Ito finished top 20 overall in the USPCA Region 1 trials and first place in the 4-man team regional trials. Just last year, he finished 3rd in the 4-man team department at the USPCA Region 1 trials. Thank you for your service, K9 Caleb, K9 Ito, and K9 Barrow. We need your help locating people in this week's Missing Person segment. The first juvenile we are highlighting in this segment is 15-year-old Aaliyah Kishana Thomas. Thomas is a habitual runaway. Thomas has been missing since April 22, 2017. We are also looking for 14-year-old Jacoby Mikkel Edwards. Edwards has been missing since April 20th. Edwards is also wanted for violation of probation. Additionally, we are looking for 15-year-old Katerius DeMarcus Jones. Jones has been missing since April 29, 2017. Our last missing person we would like your help in locating is 40-year-old Terry Dickerson. Dickerson is a missing endangered adult who has been missing since April 18, 2017. If you have any information on any of these missing people, please contact the ECSO at 436-9620.
Earlier this month, the University of West Florida criminology and criminal justice students got a first-hand experience in our use of force simulator. Dr. Richard Huff brought students from his use of force directed study course to the ECSO, where they quickly learned our deputies have to be prepared for anything. Do you want to start your own neighborhood watch, but you aren't sure how? Join us on Tuesday, May 16th at 5 o'clock p.m. for our one-night Neighborhood Watch Academy. You don't have to form a group to attend. All the materials covered will be helpful and informative for anyone who attends. For more information, contact David Craig at 436-9281.
Most of what we do around the Sheriff's Office wouldn't be possible without our civilian volunteers, so to celebrate them, the ECSO held a luncheon in their honor. Thank you to all of those of you who volunteer at the ECSO.
I'm Escambia County Sheriff David Morgan, and thank you for watching Ask the Sheriff. This is your chance to ask me any questions you want answered about the ECSO. Our team hits the streets again, and here are some of the questions you asked. We had a question on how does someone make a comment about a law enforcement officer or issue at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, and what procedures do we have in place to make sure that it's followed up on? Well, actually, that's a couple of parts to this question. Number one, I mean, you can do the old tried and true method, and that's write us a letter. We get a lot of letters at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, and I mean truly a lot on a weekly basis, usually complimenting officers. Of course, we also get the letters that are critical of the Escambia County Sheriff's Office and how we handled a particular situation. You can also do this online. Go to our website, and there's a drop-down page on how you make comments to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Now, of course, if they're complimentary letters, it comes to my office, and I'll normally attach a letter to that, thanking our officers for their interaction with the community and setting a high standard at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office that we all aspire to. If it's a complaint, you can also do that by letter and send it to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Those will arrive on my desk, and then what we do is we review it. I'll normally send it back to our through our operational section. Chief Simmons will be someone who reviews it, and then Commander Bain Custer will review it, and it will eventually go down to the shift level. Number one, we'll pull all the reports and verify that the incident did in fact occur, any witness statements that are associated with the initial call, and then we determine what the appropriate action is. Usually they will go through at least what's called an internal affairs review, meaning does this complaint rise to the level that we need to open a formal investigation. You can also, when you do this online, all of those will immediately go through IA for an initial review. And over there, Lieutenant Carl Jones's folks will take a look at that, and then Lieutenant Jones makes a determination as to whether or not it should immediately be referred for an internal affairs investigation, or should we send it back through the command staff and say, is this something we can handle at shift level? Meaning, do we just call the officer in for verbal counseling or possibly a written counseling, and that resolves the issue? So again, obviously it depends upon the gravity of the allegation that you make, whether or not it requires a full and formal investigation, or is it something that can be handled at the shift level. Sammy emailed a question on any policies, programs, procedures that we have to almost help self-identify. Specifically in his email, he asked about, getting fingerprinted and photographed, and not for obviously specifically a law enforcement reason, but for possibly identification later. Sammy, while we don't have a particular program at the Sheriff's Office, that is a very valid concern that you have. As we age, we develop dementia. Almost everyone does to a certain extent, and then unfortunately some families have to suffer through a family member who may be diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So your personal safety during those times of medical transition, through the different phases of aging in our lives, we do have programs that help you with that. I would recommend that you get locally with an organization called the Council on Aging. We support that program, and they also have GPS bracelets that they can give people. And yes, they do maintain identifying data. Or you can get with a family member and ask that they accompany you, or a close friend if you would like. We've even, I've heard of people having attorneys that, who are executors of wills that also do this for people. So yes, we can help you get identifying data through, again, I would start with the Council on the Aging and work through that process. We also have a group called Seniors Against Crime that work a lot of those particular programs in the event, again, that someone gets lost and they don't know where they are. And so how did they get assistance from law enforcement to be returned to their family members? So start with that organization, Sammy, and if you don't get anything from that, please call us back, send us another email, and we'll see if we can hook you up with the right organization. Jeannie asked, after attending our CALIA class, could we change possibly the procedures on how to get your home placed on what we refer to as a watch order? For those of you that don't know what a watch order is, if you'll notify the Escambia County Sheriff's Office during periods of absence from your home, let's say you're going on vacation or you're going to go out of town for the weekend to visit family, we can take your information on your home and we put that on what we call a watch list. The watch list goes out to the officers that are patrolling your particular area of the county, and then what they'll do is they'll make a periodic check of your home, or sometimes they'll go and park actually in your driveway or out in front of your house and call in their reports, because as you well know, our officers go from call to call to call, and we have report takers at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. So the officers will park in a particular location and call in the last incidents that they've responded to. So at the end of the shift, they review their reports, they're approved by their supervisor, and then they're inputted to the system for those of us at the command staff to review. So Jeannie asked, could we automate that some way where she could just go online, or citizens, I should say, can go online and say, hey, I'd like for you to put my house on a watch order. Jeannie, we'll take a look at that. I'm not sure if I want to give you a firm yes or no in this question and answer segment. There may be some technical issues on that, and I'm primarily looking at how do we remove that from the system, or would people come in and make inputs that are not necessarily valid? This is one of those instances where we want more of a personal contact with the citizen, or the possibility of someone putting your house on a watch order when you don't want your house on a watch order. So let me think through some of the intricacies of this problem, because we've got to kind of have a little bit of foresight here, if you will, as to, this is a great idea on its surface, but could it cause some issues or problems later? So let me take a look at it, and if it's a valid thing that we can do and it's something that will enhance law enforcement, we'll most assuredly do it. The question is what's the difference between the Escambia County Sheriff's Office and Escambia County Search and Rescue? Well, number one, we're the Sheriff's Office, and by Florida Constitution and statutes, we are the highest law enforcement agency within any county, as any Sheriff's Office is. We are charged by law to do the things that we do. Escambia County Search and Rescue is a volunteer organization. They're former law enforcement, teachers, barbers, butchers, candlestick makers. It's an organization that assists us. They're a civic-minded organization at much their own expense, by the way, to assist us in both land, water, and occasionally airborne operations in searching for lost people, the Alzheimer's patient, the lost child, someone who is just missing. They also can assist us in a criminal case. They have a capability, with trained cadaver dogs, and we've used them in some instances for doing grid searches in wooded areas to see if there's any additional bodies in a particular area. So the difference is one's a governmental body and one is not. Question was if there aren't any suspects or evidence, why do you assign an investigator? Well, number one, there has to be evidence of some sort. Let's say you called and your house was burglarized. We're going to assume that it was a break-in involving something that's missing. Or your house may have been entered and initially you can't find anything that's missing. What we always want to do, and it goes up through the chain at the sheriff's office, there's always an initial response by an officer. We call that contact with law enforcement. The old joke about, or observation, I should say, it's not so much a joke about, the tree falling in the woods. If no one heard it, did it really, did it make a sound? Well, the answer, of course it did. The absence of someone there to record the fact that it made a sound doesn't negate the physical fact, which would violate the laws of physics, that it didn't make a sound. The corollary here in law enforcement is just because we don't have any initial evidence that would identify who the person was, meaning a suspect in this case, doesn't mean that we totally disregard the fact that a crime occurred. What we do is we take all the documentation, assign that to an investigator, and one of the things that they do is look for any similarities in crime. Is there anything at your particular scene that has been reported before? Was it the entry to the home? Was it a pry bar that was used? Was it a vehicle that may have been observed in your neighborhood? Because there's a whole host of things that engage when we take these reports to where we try to draw specifics that you give us that have any correlation to other events or actions that have occurred within your neighborhood. So it may well be that your report is the one that we can tie to activities of another type within your community, and then therefore we can lead or tie that particular suspect to your crime. So it's important, as we tell folks, to report all crimes to us, because again, it may be yours that assists us in breaking a case. The question was if neighborhood watch groups are effective, and how are they effective, and if they are, why don't we have more of them? I'm going to make a leap of faith here that you're a relatively new resident to Escambia County. When I took office in January of 2009, there were 13 active neighborhood watches in the entire county of Escambia County, 13. Today we have 156 neighborhood watches. We've gone from 13 to 156. I get asked this question a lot about, Sheriff, what can we do to help law enforcement? What can we do to help crime in our community, in our neighborhood? My first answer to every individual is, and question if you will also, is do you have a neighborhood watch? If you have one, you need to be actively involved. If you don't, get a hold of us at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office and we'll assist you in developing and setting up a neighborhood watch. It's one of the most effective crime fighting tools that any community can have. You say, well, what is it that they do? Normally we'll designate what's called the neighborhood watch captain, and that's just someone who's our point of contact for your neighborhood watch group. It's very simple. It can be as simple as there's 4 or 5 neighbors that get together and we want to watch out for each other, meaning that, we did this, by the way, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. There was a time in our country when we knew who our neighbors were. We would say hello in the morning, and in the afternoon, sometimes you'd get together for a weekend barbecue. We knew what each other did and who we worked for, and our kids usually played with each other. Today in society, we don't do that. And I will tell you that when I lived in California, I lived in an apartment complex for almost 6 years, and to this day, I couldn't tell you who any of my neighbors were. We would occasionally nod at each other, but we had no interaction whatsoever. They didn't know my comings and goings, and I didn't know theirs. A neighborhood watch kind of takes you back to the time that we interact with each other. We get to know that our neighbor's name is Bob or Jane or whatever, and we know that they have 3 kids. And oh, by the way, they're going to go on vacation next week, and we need to make sure they're on a watch list from the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. And let's make sure that there's no activity around Bob and Jane's house because we know they're out of town. So neighborhood watches do those simple things. Some neighborhood watches are very active, meaning they actually walk their neighborhoods and they have radios to where they can contact the sheriff's office. Some go so far as to buy a car and it has yellow lights on it, not blue lights obviously. The state statutes restricts the color of emergency lights that you can have on a vehicle. And it's even clearly marked, neighborhood watch for Warrington, neighborhood watch for Brownsville. And they actually drive around the neighborhood and call in, suspicious activity. Others who are not so active, it could be because of age or their inability to be that active, in the afternoons they open their blinds, and while they're watching TV in their living room, they're watching the traffic in their neighborhood, the vehicular traffic and the foot traffic, people walking up and down. And they report suspicious activity, or is there too much comings and goings at different hours of the night in certain houses on their block or the next block over. And they call that information in through the neighborhood watch group to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. So, that's us watching out for each other, and that's what neighborhood watch is all about. And so they're the most effective crime-fighting tool that we have in today's society. The question is, what do report takers do, and basically what are the qualifications? Don't want to get into the weeds, as we say, about report takers and what they do, but the short, easy answer is they allow our officers to remain 10-8, which means on patrol, active in your community, instead of taking time to pull over, write a lengthy report, etc. So what they do is they call in from the basic incident, give the report taker basic details. The report takers can actually assist the officer in looking up the appropriate statutes, what the violation is, etc. And they compile all this while the shift is going on, while the officer remains active in your neighborhood. And then at the end of the shift, they do a quick report review, they approve it, and then it goes to our supervisor. So again, a report taker is someone that relieves an officer of some of the administrative requirements of, again, documenting each and every response that they have contact with citizens and incidents, so they can stay, again, on patrol and active in your neighborhood, returning to the next call. Yeah, I want to remind everyone, and this is an excellent example, that we handle what's referred to as an inordinate amount of calls in Escambia County for a community of our size. Every year, I think we dropped one year to a low of about 243,000 calls for service. Let me repeat that number. 243,000 calls for service. One year we topped out at over 300,000 calls for service. That's more than one for every man, woman, and child in Escambia County. That includes the city, by the way, for that total number. For your specific requirements on qualifications to be a report taker, I would encourage you to, again, contact our Human Resources Department. You can make application online. They will tell you specifically, and they'll give you the outline as how many words per minute that you have to be able to type, what computer systems that you have to be conversant with, those sorts of things. And again, I don't obviously have the HR manual in front of me, so I won't attempt to go down what those qualifications are. But please contact our Human Resources Department at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. They'd be more than happy to assist you in that. The question was, what takes up most of my time in any given week as a sheriff of Escambia County? Excellent question, because most people, I'm sure, have formed some idea or opinion as to what a sheriff does. And most of that is probably, gleaned from, watching TV or going to movies. My day-to-day job, thank goodness, by the way, I'm not complaining, is pretty darn mundane. I'm basically, chief executive officer for a very large and complex organization. Our budget's about $60 million a year now, since we don't have the Escambia County Jail anymore. When we had the jail, at one time it inched up close to $80 million, and that doesn't include a lot of your federal grants that you're required to, maintain once the grant is given to you. We have over 700 personnel at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office engaged in myriad of activities, everything from basic patrol functions to investigation, which includes narcotics and property crimes, sex crimes, and yes, internal affairs. Then we have a large administrative group that everything from the hiring of law enforcement officers and administrative personnel. We have a large chief financial office and organization. How do we construct our annual budget that we present to the Board of County Commissioners, and how do we defend that to get the money that we need, down to how do we pay our officers every week for the job that they do. Personnel actions, probably if you was to ask me what's the one thing I spend the most time on, it's personnel actions, meaning we've hired folks, where do they get assigned. Now I don't obviously make a determination on where each and every law enforcement officer is assigned, but everything from assisting in managing their career for the promotion system up to and including disciplinary issues, all eventually either come through my office or end up on my desk. So when we had the jail, we had close to 1,200 personnel that we managed. So it's an interesting job, but unfortunately it's pretty much what a chief executive officer does. Rarely do I have an opportunity to get directly engaged in law enforcement activities, which I'm sure is what most citizens think that we do every day. Am I briefed on all of those activities? Yes, I am. I have to be conversant in those for questions that are asked when I'm out and about in the community. But as you can well imagine, I don't write the warrants for wiretaps. I don't sit and listen to wiretaps. I don't serve warrants. I don't make traffic stops. I don't do those routine day-to-day things that people associate with law enforcement, quite aptly because that's not what I was elected nor hired to do by the citizens of Escambia County. It is to run a large, complex organization with a multi-million-dollar budget.
So where do you get your dogs from?
Kayla asked, where do we obtain our canines for the Escambia County Sheriff's Office? Kayla, Lieutenant Jason Potts heads up our canine division in Escambia County. He also goes out and checks for the canines that are for sale, and the dogs have to meet a certain set of physical criteria, up to be of a certain age, etc., before we bring them into police training, because as you can well imagine, we spend thousands of dollars training each and every canine, as well as then partnering a canine handler with the particular dog. Right now we get most of our dogs from a kennel in Bowling Green, Kentucky.